Hello, everyone. My name is Piotr Kolonev, and I'm a product manager and founder at Dataedo. Welcome to our very first webinar in a series of webinars about the business glossaries and data dictionaries. The title of this webinar is a business glossaries, the what, the why, and the how. Our speaker is George Firican, a director of data governance and business intelligence at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada. He's also a public speaker and a founder of a Ligths on Data blog, training and consulting. Okay, that would be it for the introduction. Over to you, George.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Piotr, for this lovely introduction. And if you don't know me, I do have to let you know that I'm very passionate about data governance and data management in general. So as much as possible, I do try to provide practical information to help you with your questions and challenges in these domains. So please do check out lightsondata.com or my YouTube channel where I do post a video each week, or just follow me on LinkedIn and I promise you will not be disappointed. And yes, we will make the recording available to everybody that did register. I think it will be available right after it has been done. And yes, I will share the slides as well. All right, now let's get into our today's topic on business glossaries, the what, the why, and the how. So we're going to go over and see what a business glossary is, what are some of the benefits and reasons of implementing and using one, and what are those steps that one should take in order to implement it. So first, let's really see what it is, because we need to ensure that we are all on the same page. There are quite a few definitions out there, I think, and maybe a little bit of a confusion of what a business glossary is. And this is the definition that I like the most. And that is that it's a collection of business terms with their unique definitions and other useful related information. And there are three keywords here: business, unique, and information. So we're talking about business terms, business language, business verbiage, whatever synonym you want to use. We're talking about having a common place, a trusted source of curated information where anyone can go to in order to understand business terminologies and even any other relevant information around these terms that provides us with a better context of their meaning and usage. But there are all these other terms that we are encountering. Besides business glossary, we see a data, we hear about data catalog, business data dictionary, business compendium, business vocabulary, business lexicon, and so many others, right? All these terms, some synonyms, some not. Confused? I don't blame you. Not to mention any other variations like a business metadata glossary or a business metadata dictionary. Well, they don't all mean the same thing. And I'm sure there are a few other similar ones out there as well. So out of all, I do think that these four are the most prevalent. We encounter these the most: the glossary, the business dictionary, data catalog, and data dictionary. And no, they are not the same thing. And yes, they are all different. And actually, we're going to go and have another webinar in November, I think November 13th, where we will talk in greater detail about each one of these, what they are, what their benefits are to the organization, and what are those relationships between all of them. And you can just go ahead and register after this webinar for the next, but I'm sure you'll also get an invite, but do follow it. Okay, let's go back to our today's webinar. I do want to quickly go over what the main difference is between a business dictionary and a business glossary. So let's do that by pulling the Merriam-Webster dictionary, though obviously any other dictionary would work. And as you can see, I've already typed in the term report and taken a screenshot of it, which you can see here on the screen. Now, what's the main thing that becomes apparent to you? And I'm sorry that this is not a conversation and you can't really answer, so I'll just tell you, well, it's the fact that the term report or the noun report has multiple entries for its definition, right? You can see here that there are six different definitions amongst three different meanings, I guess. And that's really a definitive for a dictionary, whereas with a glossary, you have one term, one unique term, and one definition, whichever one you choose to be. So that's, I think, the main difference. So please do have this as a main takeaway, that a business dictionary can have multiple definitions for the same term, which I do find confusing because one would always need to figure out the context of that term, of that definition, and obviously mistakes would still be made. Whereas with the business glossary, you have that one unique definition, one unique term, right? You remember the definition of the business glossary, that it had these three keywords: business, information, and unique. So that's the main difference between a business dictionary and a business glossary. So now let's see what are some of those benefits and reasons why you should have this tool within your organization. And there are obviously quite a few of them. And I think the most obvious one is that really we all come into work with these assumptions based on our life or work experience. And again, we do bring them into the workplace without always validating them. And having a common understanding of proper usage of data and business term definitions does help, as you can imagine. It also enables consistent communication between business units, between employees. And I think the term customer is a perfect example of this, because most of the time it does not mean the same thing for the procurement department as it does for the supply chain management department, as it does for sales, for marketing, for the IT department. You get the idea. Same with the terms employee, student, alum, patient. All these words that are quite common and a natural part of our vocabulary can actually have different definitions between business units, between organizations, between industries. To give you an example from my current workplace, an alum is an individual that graduated from a Senate-approved program. So if you just finished a course, or if you're just enrolled in one session, you attended a couple of courses, then you're not considered an alum. But if you finished or graduated from a Bachelor of Arts program, medical program, MBA, so forth and so on, then you are considered an alum. At the same time, the athletics department considers anyone that participated in their varsity teams. So if they were on the swimming team, football, basketball, hockey, and so forth and so on, they are considered an alum by the athletics department. So as you can imagine, without a business glossary, there can be some confusion when athletics communicates with the faculty of arts or medicine or commerce, when they're being asked, how many graduates, how many alums do you have in your faculty that have participated in athletics? Without that glossary, there can definitely be some mismatches in terms of those aggregates. Same with patient. Let's not even worry about the different medical units, because now we're getting into different patient types and so on. But what if somebody comes into a clinic for medical attention and they're not being helped, at least not yet? Now, while they are waiting, are they considered a patient? There are usually metrics on patient wait time, so maybe yes. What about those being treated that do not have any paperwork, nor do they exist in the system, but they are still being treated? Are they considered patients? And again, a business glossary would provide us with that facility, would enable us to get those answers to those questions. It also really expedites training of new and existing employees and leverages that individual knowledge. Just imagine that you have a place for common, trusted, curated information that anybody can access to. It definitely helps. Also establishes ownership. Inadvertently, I think that ownership is usually established when the glossary is being built. And the reason why is because as you're coming up with the terms and their definitions to plug into your business glossary, somebody needs to give that stamp of approval, right? And that someone or that group of people would become really the owners. And there's higher implications than just having that ownership on the business glossary list, because anything that would be related to that term, so any policy, any procedure, any even data quality metrics, would most likely need the approval or involvement of this individual or this council. And by council, I'm mostly referring to a data governance council or committee or group, whatever you want to call it. And the council would provide really ownership over organization-wide terms like patient and customer, alum, and so forth and so on. All right. Another benefit is that it does increases trust and confidence in information. It really reduces misuse of data due to inaccurate understanding of the business concepts and terms. So let's take a report that's being built by the business intelligence team as an example. Let's say it's already been developed, it's been tested, and now it's been deployed, right? So it's made available for usage to the end users there. And the end user would still complain about some of the results that they're seeing, right? Maybe they're seeing an aggregation for the patient waiting times metric, and they don't like what they see. Now, there are three reasons why the end user might complain. The first one is that the report developer maybe did something wrong. It's unlikely because usually you have pretty good report developers, programmers on your teams. And not even that, but before it gets deployed, it does go through a few rounds of testing. So bugs should have been caught. But needless to say, there might still be a chance that a bug is in there. So that's one reason. The second one is that the data has a bit of an issue. And that's no surprise because I'm sure that we all have data quality issues. So the last one is that the end user is actually making a wrong assumption. So maybe when they're looking at that patient waiting time metric, they're thinking that the people in the waiting line, they're being counted, whereas maybe that's not the definition for patient for that particular institution. So it definitely increases that trust, having everybody on board on having the same usage of term and understanding of the definition. And lastly, it obviously improves productivity and timeliness of the decision-making process. All right. So now you know what it is. What are some of the main benefits? I'm going to ask Piotr to start a poll that you can take during the duration of this webinar, which is just going to ask you if you already have a business glossary in place, or are you working on one? Are you planning on having one? And we can look at the answers at the end. And yes, they are going to be anonymous if you have any concerns about that. All right.
So the poll is on, and we have the first answers.
Thank you. You see it on the top right there. There's a polls tab. You can just answer it there. Okay. Now, let's go over the main steps on what you need to do to implement a business glossary. The first one is really to get the buy-in, to get sponsorship and resources for it. And we'll go over in details for each one of them. Then you want to determine and adopt best practices, and there are quite a few. Then you want to find and start plugging in content, populate it. And lastly, ideally, you want to find a tool in order to become a bit more efficient. So again, want to get the buy-in, best practices, content, and then plug everything into a tool. So let's go into the buy-in. Because for this one, you really need to start getting a business case in place, get some sponsorship, and of course, there might be some budgetary needs that you need to account for. So what about this business case that I'm mentioning? Well, kind of take everything that we covered in the benefits section, and you kind of plug it in here. Or you can just concentrate on the main pain points as well, which really you just go over the benefits, you flip them around, look at them the opposite way, see not having those, what issues that's been causing, and plug that in there as well. And also identify those stakeholders that are deeply impacted by a lack of a business glossary and mention them. So just, the message I think overall is that, hey, there's a high cost to productivity and communication and trust in information and even data, and we need a business glossary to get some benefits out of it. So you put everything in this document that's really memorializing the business purpose of the business glossary. Again, it outlines those challenges that I mentioned, which is really the opposite of the benefits. And it doesn't not need to be more than a 1-pager, 2-pager max, because it's usually just used for executive communication. And you do use this document to secure a sponsor. So back to the sponsorship thing. If you do have a data governance program in place, then it's good. I think part of the work is done already, because this would probably be one of those deliverables of the program, and it might already be on the list. And things are a bit easier because the sponsor of the program becomes the sponsor of the project, of the business glossary project. Alternatively, it can be a data governance committee or a working group, whatever you want to call it, that sponsors it. If you do not have a data governance program in place, then make sure you get a sponsorship that's high up at executive level, ideally VP level, C level, definitely someone at least at director level, because you not only need financial support, but also involvement and participation from your entire organization. And no, not everybody will start, writing definitions in there, but you do need their expertise for sure, and for people to validate, again, that ownership part, and definitely adoption. You want it to be used. Okay, on the budget piece, you need a budget, obviously. In order to set everything up, you need a budget to learn and discover best practices. You need a budget to maintain it, evolve it, and again, ideally have a tool so you can manage it more efficiently and integrate with other data management tools such as a data dictionary, a data catalog, even data quality tools. So there's a few ways that you can make your case. The first one, the most obvious one, is part of that business case, right? That's where you can ask, hey, may I have some resources too? And again, it's not necessarily just about the cash, but maybe a person to help you out as well. If for some reason that doesn't work, there's a couple other options. You can make it a line item as part of a IT project budget or a business project. So if you're thinking of replacing your CRM, if you're upgrading your CMS or ERP system, it's a great opportunity to put that in there as a budget line item, put the business glossary in there. If, for example, you're getting ready to embark on a new big marketing campaign, if you're launching new products, if maybe you're acquiring a company or merging with another company, again, great opportunities to kickstart business glossary and make your case for it. All right, now you need to start and understand what are those best practices that you should adopt. The first one is to figure out what other attributes besides the term name and the definition should you have in this business glossary. And yeah, I mean, that's really bare bones, the term name and the definitions, but you should have these, what I call foundational attributes, which are maybe about 10 or so. And afterwards, again, what I call secondary attributes. It's another round of additions of things that you might want to record and associate with that term. But that's more in, let's say, a more mature state. Adding everything at once can make it a bit overwhelming and too hard to maintain. So I want to give you an example from Dataedo's business glossary tool here. Let me just make it bigger. There you go. So as you can see, we do have the term name, of course, and its definition, but it's not the only thing that's available here. You also have some sort of a classification. You see what the status might be, who the data steward would be, maybe even data owner. And in this instance, you can even tie it in with some technical metadata. Again, there's a few other attributes that you can add as well, such as not just a synonym, but acronym, abbreviations, anything else that would help too. The source, again, the ownership, and a few others. I actually do cover this and quite a few other best practices in my online course on business glossaries. Okay. Then you also want to look into naming and definitions guidelines. You need to have some best practices for how you're going to write the terms and construct those definitions. Otherwise, you will have garbage and you lose your audience, and the business glossary would have to, probably be redone or scraped. It's not going to gain that traction that you need. And again, we are not expected to be writers, and especially not writers for Merriam-Webster. But following some well-defined guidelines can help us create some great content for the business glossary and escape us from unclear an ambiguous and circular definitions. Robert Steiner actually always gives this example of the cheeseburger definition, where he says cheeseburger is a burger with cheese, right? It's not very helpful. So you don't want to have that type of a content and level of quality in your business glossary. And again, there's a lot to cover here, but we don't have time today. I'm just giving you a really high level. In a high level, really, you just need to learn how to be specific, disambiguate, concise, and accessible to the full breadth of the target audience. The other best practices you need to keep in mind is around that framework and process. So the term itself goes through different stages. From the moment it does get identified, it goes through some sort of a quality control, and then it's finally published, maintained, and potentially even retired at one point. There's different statuses that you can assign, again, depending on the framework that you choose, but you still do need to decide what each one of these is, how it's being handled, who deals with them at every stage. You definitely don't want self-submissions for everything. So you do need to figure out what are those data stewards that are going to be at each one of these stages. I'll just make this bigger, and don't worry about the content necessarily. Just this is very high level, so don't stress your eyes to try and read all of this. I'm just trying to really kind of prove a point that for each one of these steps, you do need to probably engage with different stakeholders, and there's different if-then criteria that you need to consider in order to ensure that quality of the content. Which brings us to the third point, which is the content itself. My recommendation is to start focusing on a business area. It can be challenging to actually just go and focus on those organization-wide terms. So again, things like employee, customer, patient, alumni, what have you. All these organization-wide terms, product might be a great one too. They're hard because it involves a lot of business units to provide their take, their feedback, and it can take months. I can tell you, we defined donor, I think earlier this year. It took us more than 6 months to get consensus on something that we've been dealing with for more than 20 years, but it was quite difficult to get a common understanding and agreement for everybody of how we define donor within the university. So do find a business unit to focus on. It might make it a little bit easier, and of course you don't need to involve everybody for it. Maybe start with sales or marketing as an example, or even IT. It's maybe it's easier to define those technical terms, if you will. Okay, so find that focus. That's my recommendation. And then you want to just do some hunting and gathering. You want to find all those sources of definitions in the organizations, and maybe start with what you have, because I'm sure you do have those terms, you do have those definitions out there somewhere, usually in documents, in emails, some reports, data models, data dictionaries, and so on. And actually the data dictionary, I think it's a really great source of trying to identify what terms should you start focusing on and plug it in. And again, I'm going to bring up an example here from Dataedo from their data dictionary. And the reason why this is good is, well, first of all, a lot of organizations tend to invest in a data dictionary first. I'm not exactly sure why. My assumption is because it's easier to make a case by IT for IT on a tool to purchase. It's definitely a helpful, very, very helpful tool to have in your tool set. Anyways, and as you're plugging things in, you would usually find definitions like this one. So the first one, code of the department, that's I believe a definition for department code as an example. So the definitions are not perfect, of course, but again, it gives you a starting point. What can you plug out of here and start plugging into your business glossary after you refine them? I did a bit of a quality check there. And one thing I do want to mention is that the data dictionary can definitely be linked to corresponding terms in the business glossary, so you can have that relationship, and it goes both ways too. Okay. And now really it's all about the tool. What do I mean by this? Well, you can definitely go and start something in-house. Now, I think it's fine if you really start with a pen and paper as well, or just a Word document. Even better, you can just start with a spreadsheet, because you can track things nicer. You have the different columns, right? You have the actual table that you can track things in. But it can come a bit unwieldy. We've actually started with a SharePoint solution, which is just a custom list with all the different columns that we wanted. I'm sorry I can't show you the definitions plugged in here, as somewhere are sensitive. Anyhow, but it's a great place to start, just to, again, get that ball rolling, get some momentum. Though I can tell you that it can become tricky. It can become tricky after you've maybe gathered over 50 terms or so. It's hard to manage, and it's hard to start triggering those updates, because ideally, if you do have some sort of an update, or somebody is requesting a change to be done, you want it to be triggered to the entire organization. You also want it to be connected to a data dictionary, a data catalog as well, and not always do those connections yourself. Even in reports, as you can imagine, right? So sometimes you might be referring to these terms. It would be nice to have some sort of a tool to link them all. And that's kind of what you can do with a specialized tool, what people call a data governance tool, which usually is part of a bigger tool set. It doesn't necessarily just come on its own, but you can go on the route of Colibra, for example. I'm sure some of you might have heard of it, though there's others, from Irwin. This is a quick example from Irwin, or Datum, or Informatica here. And there's a few others. And I'm going to ask Piotr to do a quick demo of Dataedo as well, and walk us through the business glossary part of it.
Okay, thanks, George. Now I would like to take a couple of minutes to show you one of the tools, and that would be the Dataedo. Let me share my screen. Okay, let me put that on. Okay, I think you all see the screen right now.
I do, yes.
Okay, that's good. So what you have on the screen right now is a Dataedo desktop application, where you can define your business glossary and data dictionary as well. So Dataedo is a metadata management tool, and it's built on the repository of business and technical metadata. So the main module of the tool is the technical data dictionary functionality. So it allows you to scan your databases and other data sources and import the data dictionary information. So right now we can see one of the databases, and here the list of tables, and along with the definition of each table. So we have a field name, a data type. We have description, which has been extracted from the source as well. You can provide a description in the tool. Okay, but I would like to focus on the business glossary. So aside the data dictionary, which are two different things, and if you'd like to learn more, George will have a webinar next month where he differentiates between the two. So right now, let me show you the business glossary. So what you see right here is a list of business terms in a glossary. Each entry, each term is defined by the title and the definition and some custom fields. This is something George mentioned a couple of minutes ago. So this is, as you can see, these terms are organized in the hierarchy. which provides an additional information on top of the list. You can also list the terms. On top of the hierarchy, you can also define the complex relationships between the terms. So you can, if you have synonyms, you can define them twice, like in the dictionary George mentioned. You can define them and define that they are a synonym. I think it is like here. You can define different kinds of relationships between the terms, and that becomes part of your knowledge base of not just the definitions, but how they are linked to another. So, so this is the business glossary. This is something you could expect from the tool that handles builds business glossaries. What is especially interesting about the Dataedo specifically is that you can link those terms, so business glossary, to the data dictionary, so to your physical data. You can see here that the inventory location term is linked to a product inventory table and the location ID column. I can jump to the definition of this table, and you can see, and this is the table, these are the columns, and you can see that location ID column is linked to the inventory location along with the definition. Okay. So this is the metadata you can gather in one repository, and then what you can do, you can share this in a HTML page that could be hosted on any server or even shared folder on the disk. Okay, so that is what I wanted to show you about the capabilities. We will have more details in the webinar I will host next week if you'd like to see how we can build all those things. So let me tell you right now about the benefits of this specific approach. I see 4 benefits. The first one is the obvious one, that you have a single and accessible source of the definitions of your business terms. So if I'd like to know what's the inventory location, I can just look it up, right? So I look it up and I can see all the metadata, like a definition and a status. There could be also a owner field, some other fields you'd like to add. I can see those relationships, and so that leads me to benefit number 2. I can easily find the data. So I can go from the top level to the bottom and find specific data fields. So I can jump to the table, and that brings me to the third benefit. If I work with the data, let's say I'm a data analyst or BI developer, I worked with the tables. And so you can see I have a description of the field, data type. Those are very technical things. And somebody describing this could focus on very, very low level information. But when you link the two, you can easily provide an additional level of metadata, of business metadata to your data. Okay, and number 4 would be that the separation of the data dictionary and the business glossary and the ability to link the two, like you've seen over here, it provides a much better communication between business and IT. So IT can focus on those technical definitions, what are the foreign keys, constraints, and the meaning in a specific application-specific context. And business can focus on the meaning of the data, and the fact that you have those linked gives both of the parties a much better perspective. So IT can understand the actual meaning of the data they are handling, and business can find the data much easier. Okay, so that was it about the presentation. As I said, if you'd like to see more how to build it and share it, I will host another webinar next week. You'll receive an email where you can sign up for another webinar. And if you can make it, you'll receive a recording. So don't worry if your calendar is busy. And at this point, I'd like to also mention that we have a gift for all of you, everybody who attended this webinar, or if you are watching this. We want to give you a 90-day free subscription for the Dataedo Enterprise. So this is something what you're looking at. So I've seen that some of you in the poll, if you go to the poll tab, I've seen some of you are planning or are currently developing business glossary. So that could give you a good idea of what to expect from the tool, or even get you started with your metadata management program. Okay, that is it. Now over to you, George.
Thank you. That was very insightful, and thank you for the gift. I really felt like we had an Oprah moment. You get a gift, and you get a gift. Thank you. All right. Okay. So so these are the 4 main steps that you do need to take it. Obviously, very high level. There's a bit of a 5th step, let's say, and that's the communication. I think this is very important. I always bring this up. Communication, especially in data governance, is key at each one of these steps. You always need to communicate what you have done, what you are doing, what you are planning to do. And as many chances as you're getting, communicate through all the different mediums. I definitely do believe in the power of over communication. Nobody would complain about these matters. Okay. So we went over what a business glossary is, what are some of those benefits, and why you want to have one in your organization, and what are those main steps that one needs to take in order to implement one. So again, don't forget to get in touch with me and connect with me on LinkedIn. I always enjoy meeting new people in person or online and listening to your feedback and sharing ideas and information. So now let's see if there are any questions out there that we can answer. And of course, again, you can always reach out after this has been done. Get in touch with me and ask me more.
Okay, let's go to the questions. For everyone, if you have a question, there is a question tab. Please go there and ask your question, and we'll try to answer it right now. Okay, so Iqbal asked, do you think each attribute in the database should be defined? If there are 5,000 attributes, how can we effectively define them?
Iqbal, that's a very good question. And sometimes we can suffer from that paralysis because we see all these attributes and like, oh my God, where do I start? The quick answer is that no, you don't need to define all of them. I recommend, well, there's a few ways of tackling this, right? You can maybe start looking at the reports that are already built. Look at those columns in the reports and see, are those defined? Is it clear? Is it consistent from one report to another? So you can start there. The other one is you can look into any of those tables that are tied to reference data, because that will give you a quick benefit. So things like let's say the address table that's tied to the country's reference data as an example. So you can just start defining that. What is an address? What is address line 1? What's contactable? What's a phone? Yeah, they're quick wins. So look for either start at the report level and identify those terms there. The challenge with that is that some could also be those organization-wide terms like product, customer, and so forth. And or look for those tables that are using the reference tables. And again, the reference data as well, metadata is something that you can look to define as well.
We have another question.
Yeah.
Bernard asked, who should define the scope of the business glossary? Would that be business or IT?
I think that should be the business. The business glossary is definitely business driven, and it should start there. Okay.
Another question asked by Randy.
Mm-hmm.
If you have more than one system, does the glossary encompass all the systems, or are they created per system, especially if you are not using a software tool?
Hey, Randy, good to see you, and great question. So best practice is to have a business glossary that's organization-wide. Then you might have multiple data dictionaries per system. So sorry, per organization. So you have one data dictionary per system per database. Though if you're going to define, again, let's say customer, you would have one business glossary for the entire organization that would hold the answer to what a customer is. Though that means that it can also tie in with multiple data dictionaries where customer data or that entity customer is being recorded.
Okay, thanks. Mark asked, how does the end website generate? Can the Datadoc site be separate from the glossary for different audiences?
I think that's for you, Piotr.
Yeah, I think that relates to the Dataedo. Currently, the export is per. You can define the scope of the export. So you would need to define different exports for different audiences. Although we are building the tool, and that will include a portal and the permissions. So you'll set up permissions per the database and glossary. Yep. Okay. Next, Mikhail asked, do you recommend to start doing a data dictionary or a business glossary? How can an organization implement a strategy that provides value in all stages?
That's a loaded question, Miguel, and I think we'll cover more of the details in the next webinar. And the quick answer is that it depends, really. I've seen organizations start with a data dictionary first or with a business glossary. Again, it kind of depends on what's the driver behind these. For example, those organizations that are starting with a data dictionary is because they might have some sort of a master data management project program in place, and they need to have all these different ETLs and data integrations, and it's very efficient and valuable to have a data dictionary to start recording all that technical metadata around the different tables. And in order for the developers to know, well, if I'm going to consume or publish this data, how, where do I pick it up from, as an example. Whereas with the business glossary, maybe it's driven by a BI program or data analytics program, even an AI program, or a whole centralized reporting strategy, what have you. And I think that's a great driver in there to make sure that you are consistent with your external reporting and even internal reporting and have a clear understanding of everything. So it depends. That's the truth.
Okay, Thomas asked a question about the Dataedo. So can you associate multiple data elements with the single business term? So the answer is yes. You can have multiple data dictionaries. As George said, data dictionaries are per data source or database, and business glossaries are global per organization. So Dataedo allows you to link one term to as many data elements as you wish. Actually, that's the case. So if you have a data warehouse, CRM, ERP, the same data exists in all of them, and that's really a good practice to link all of them.
For sure.
Okay.
Can we take a quick look at the poll as well?
Okay.
I don't know if everybody can see it or not, but it looks like
I think people can see it. See the breakdown of the percentages.
Okay. So it's great. It's great to see that a lot of people are either in a planning phase or they're thinking or developing one, or they already have one. It always makes me happy when I see or read or hear about organizations that are investing in their data governance, and they value data as an asset, and they understand that artifacts and tools like a business glossary, it is very beneficial to have. And for those that are that 10%, I do hope that you're soon going to go into the planning phase, or you're at least thinking about it.
Okay, good. I think that the time is nearly up. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, George, very much for your presentation. I think it was great. I'd like to invite everybody to our future webinars, especially the one with George, when he will talk about the data catalog and business glossary and data dictionary. You will receive the link to sign up with email in a couple of minutes. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to deliver this webinar, and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, hope to see you soon. Thanks, George. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.